It's an incredible part of the world with fish that will probably that never see a hook. They never see a bait ever. And there's probably lakes that have never been, many lakes that just never been fished ever.
Hey everyone, John Stenstrom here from the Castosphere podcast, and today we have a special guest. His name is Troy Lindner. If you've heard that name before, it's probably because you've seen him on TV. He's the host of AnglingBuzz and the Ontario Experience, and he's also part of fishing royalty, the dynasty, the Lindner Media family. Troy is an avid bass fisherman. He competed on tour and was able to win 40 events, including the FLW Open, the 2016 Wild West Bass Tournament Trail, and even became Angler of the Year. That's crazy. So amazing accomplishments right there. And we dive into a host of different things that you're going to love. The top three include what it's like traveling around the world, to go fishing. That's near and dear to my heart. The second is what it's like to run a TV show and what the media landscape is in case you want to start your own Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel, what that entails, the work behind it. And lastly, some travel gear that you should have so that you can fish wherever you want. But before we jump into the interview, I wanted to give a big shout out to Joneserson23, who left the review. One of the better fishing podcasts, listened to several, and although only a few episodes in, I'm certainly going to be a regular listener. Great work, John. Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. If you have 3 seconds, please do me a huge favor and leave a rating and a review. I read all the comments, and the ratings help other people find this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for doing that in advance. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Troy Lindner. Hey Troy, welcome to the show. I would love for you to give a little bit of a background of how you got into fishing.
Yeah, great to be here. I guess I grew up in a fishing family, growing up in central Minnesota, with the Lindner family. My father, Al Lindner, my uncle, Ron Lindner, and we grew up. They started in fishermen, and before that, some of the fishing report segments. So I grew up, I suppose, in a fishing family, and this is kind of all I know. I know this life. I don't really know any other life. So when we got together at Thanksgiving, Christmas time, any family gatherings, we talked about fishing, and grew up fishing. Really, my whole family is pretty much involved in one way or another throughout their entire life, and either in fishermen, Lindner Media Productions, which started back in 2000. And I moved out to California, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. I moved out to California about 20 years ago. So growing up in Minnesota and then going to school at Arizona State. And then after Arizona State, I moved out to California, just followed some friends, and actually love SoCal. The weather's great, and there's actually a lot of good fishing out here, and very different from Minnesota, which has challenged me a lot. So you go from the land of 10,000 lakes to Southern California, fewer lakes, but obviously the ocean. Well, I didn't grow up around the ocean, so the little bit of ocean fishing it really challenges me, and I like the challenge of the pressured fisheries here in SoCal. And it's a lot of, and obviously the weather can't be beat. I mean, no ice augers needed, and the heaviest. This is my winter coat, the sweatshirt. I got a Rapala sweatshirt. This is my winter coat for out here.
What were you guys fishing for back in Minnesota? Were you guys going after just bass and pike and muskie, or were?
Yeah. Growing up, started obviously panfish, and then moving up, bass. And if you caught a 2 or 3 pound pike, it was an absolute monster. And the main lake here, the main, around the lakes, the main fish is walleye. Everybody fishes walleye. That's the bread and butter fish. That's the trophy fish there. And in the Midwest, it's sort of most of the anglers there are kind of multi-species fishermen, and they're not necessarily specialists. They know how to catch bass, and then up there smallmouth, largemouth, so they can fish for both, and then usually switch gears for walleye, pike, and then you also have carryover for muskie, crappie, panfish, and a little bit for catfish. So it is interesting in the upper Midwest to see, you're used to just growing up and just fishing for different fish. So the lures and the rods that you had a variety of different, gear for the species. And unlike other parts of the country, say like the Mid-South. I mean, it's bass. It's bass fishing. It's what we do. It's largemouth bass, and obviously a popular, the most popular game fish, freshwater fish in North America and probably the world. And there's others fish down there, but I think the Midwest, especially Minnesota, is you're not necessarily a bass angler. You're just an angler, period. And you just go out to catch fish, whatever's biting, whatever you like. You might have a specialty in smallmouth, largemouth, but growing up there, you just, and most people there, you grew up to catch different fish.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I haven't done enough fishing out in the Midwest. I mean, when I would go back to Iowa, where my dad had farms growing up, we stayed
Nice.
more in the cornfields and stuff like
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
I do remember a couple of times where my grandpa would take me to some little hidden lakes and go for some of the panfish or try and catch a catfish from time to time. But I want to go back to what you were saying, that you come from a fishing family, because that's pretty unique. I would almost say like you guys have like a mini dynasty or something, because everybody's so involved in fishing, and you have your own fishing media company. So can you kind of, how did that all get started?
That went from what, hearing the stories from my father and my uncle, back then there was no roadmap for it. And they just grew up with a passion for fishing. They grew up, my father, my uncle grew up in Chicago, on the streets of Chicago, in the city, and they would summer vacation up around the Hayward area up in Wisconsin. And my dad knew, they both kind of knew at an early age that they wanted to make a living fishing, whatever that entailed. And their journey, both their journeys are quite incredible. When they first formed, they're making tackle in their basement and they're in high school, paying their friends. I forgot if they paid them food or they just paid them a little bit to pour hooks and pour weights and and kind of mini entrepreneurs in their basement, which you see today with a lot of youth, and even people, swim bait companies, being made out of a garage, kind of the same concept. And it's they could probably talk about it in so much more detail, and I wish I remembered more specifics of it. So they started, with that, and they kind of gradually went into like these fishing reports. And I remember this story that my dad said they mailed out back at, and this is, oh gosh, what was that, early 70s maybe? Said to be the early or mid 70s. So they mailed out these subscriptions for a new magazine or fishing report. And then, back then you just sent a check in. If you want to subscribe to something, you sent a check in, you put, the information on there, all right, 1 year subscription for $5.95 or whatever it was, or you send in cash. A lot of times in the mail, I remember that we would just send cash. And it's a different time now.
Right.
But I remember my uncle and my dad, they have all these subscriptions come in, a lot of cash, checks in cash, and they put it on on this desk, and it was something I forgot in today's value. I could be off, something like $100,000 of just cash.
Wow.
And the thing is they didn't have anything made yet, and they have to create something, print it, and mail it out in like 6 weeks or a month. And they had all this cash, and then they're like, great, we got all, it's almost like too good. Like, how do all of a sudden you have all this incoming interest about something you want to do. And it's like, oh, this is great. And you're like, whoa, this is almost too much. This is too good. Like, so they scrambled to come out with these fishing reports. And that's what became In Fisherman, what is today known as In Fisherman Magazine. And they started that company. And if you look at like the first issue, it's amazing. I mean, we still talk about its seasonal changes. I mean, they came up with the pre-spawn spawn. It's there in 19, whatever that was, 75, I think, or 76. That issue came out. It's the exact. It hasn't changed. It's the 10 seasons: pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, pre-summer, summer, summer peak, fall turnover, winter. It hasn't changed in the spawning. They even figured out back then the spawning temperatures and fish for bass, for smallmouth, largemouth, and it's amazing the amount of knowledge and information in those early reports that we still use today, that you see in YouTube videos. And what happened in those early days, especially with my father. So he competed in the old in the first years of the Bassmaster. So he was on the early years of it. And there was a certain year, and he said he fished this tournament and he fished it mechanically. He didn't fish it to win. He won 2 Bassmaster tournaments. And in this last tournament, he fished it just to fish it, just kind of go through it. And his mind was kind of elsewhere on things. And this was kind of a turning point. And after that season, him and 2 other gentlemen left the tournament scene to go start their businesses. And my dad left to go start in fishermen. And another guy, which I'm sure these 2 other people, I'm sure probably nobody's ever heard of, this guy named Bill Dance, that went to go do some media TV stuff. And we all know where that is. And where that, I mean, he's gigantic, and what he's built with his, over the years, his TV show is huge. And another gentleman named Johnny Morris, went to go start a little tackle shop, and they all left at the same time. And obviously Johnny Morris with Bass Pro Shops is a huge player just in the, in retail space period in America. And it was, an interesting time back then, that they all split, all 3 of those guys, my father, Johnny Morris, and Bill Dance, left at the exact same time. And other guys, Ricky Clun or Rick Clun, my dad calls him Ricky Clun. Some of those other guys stayed on to fish the tour and stayed in the tournament scene. And, you look back, that was the birth of, TV, the magazine industry for fishing information, and also, big, brick and mortar fishing, before all this e-commerce stuff, brick and mortar fishing, as those stores started to build up. So it was a really, an interesting time back then. And I wasn't even born or as this was starting to happen, I was maybe 1-2 years old. So this is just from the stories that he's told. And as I kind of grew up into it in the early 80s, as I became aware of my own, I guess, consciousness, to put it that without getting weird, when I'm 5 or 6 years, 5 years old, and I kind of remember growing up and just kind of grew up fishing. It's what, you grew up, you went out fishing, and my dad did hit the road a lot. So he, in the early days in fisherman, he would be gone, oh my gosh, how many, 250 days a year? So probably 250 days a year. And some of those early years, he'd be home 100 days a year. 1 out of 3 days he was home, and trying to build in fishermen and trying to build these accounts, advertise, and all this stuff. So he was on the road a lot. And then including in that, the fishing, fishing and filming. And as they branched off into radio and making the videos, and Fisherman Communications Network, in the late 90s was very big, across TV, magazines, they had different titles, the PWT, the tournaments, the books, the radio show. And then he kind of left there along with James and the others after they sold the company, went into Lindner Media Productions at 2000, strictly for video production. So that's kind of a little bit of a background more on my, some of the highlights, of growing up, in a fishing environment. And it's been, and there's been highs and lows. They've lost some major accounts, and some things didn't pay off, like Camp Fish that they had to sell. That was a real heartbreaker for them. Camp Fish was a passion project. It was a nonprofit. It was marketed through Fisherman, but the actual 501c3 was through my father and my uncle. And they had this kids fishing camp up in Walker, Minnesota called Camp Fish. Before that, it was Camp Danworthy. So it was started in like 79, and it was a youth outdoor fishing camp, and it ran for a few years. And Fisherman marketed it once my dad and my uncle kind of took it over, renamed it Camp Fish, and it ran for a number of years until about 91. And the youth that came through, I mean, it was, you still talk to people that went to Camp Fish now, and it was the highlight of their childhood. The week that they went there, they look forward to it, and you don't have really anything like that nowadays. It's a different time now, but Camp Fish, it was a real heartbreaker when they had to close the doors and sell it because of some financial, it just wasn't making any money. It was just losing money year after year after year. And as much as you want to, continue that, eventually they had to sell it off. And my uncle actually never returned to the property Once they sold it, I went back there with them like 4 years ago this summer. It was the first time my uncle was on the property since they sold it almost 30 years ago, because he couldn't. He said it hurt too much. Like it was just too much. They put so much into that, from not only financially but through their heart, into
Right.
that, and to see it and to sell off something they put so much into was so hard for them. And a couple years ago, we kind of redid it. A nonprofit runs it now. It's called Camp Bliss, and for a couple summers, myself, Brad Peterson, some other people that were involved in the original Camp Fish, we ran some adult-child sessions there, and we're going to continue to try to grow that and bring that spirit of Camp Fish back. It's a different time now, and I don't think you can, quite the same way. If the kids overslept, they got thrown in the lake. I don't know if we can do that now. So if a kid wasn't there for the breakfast, they'd pick, and I got thrown in. I overslept, and they wrap you in the bunk and they throw you off in the dock in the cold water, and that was just it's at a different time now.
I
You
miss the
probably
better
have some
days. Those
parents.
are the good days. That's when it toughened you up.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It toughened you up without, being too hard on, things like that, we had dodgeball, you play dodge. Now I don't even know if dodgeball is even allowed anymore. It's probably too many lawsuits on dodgeball. I don't know.
That's an aggression sport. We don't do those here. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
Sorry if I offended anybody on that one, but I love dodgeball. Dodgeball, I still play it now. It's great.
Mm.
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. Going back to what you originally stated, is your dad still friends with Bill and all those guys from back in the day, or was that kind of when they all went their separate ways? They kind of just hung out from afar.
Yeah. They, they remain friends, and still today, and they're kind of, they rarely see each other, because they don't really do the same sports shows anymore. They all don't travel as much as they used to. So they're still friends, and they might talk once a year or something like that. Um, it's like old high school or college buddies. As you get out of college, you catch up maybe once a year. You see them once every 2 years. It's kind of like that. But the original foundation for what we have now, it's kind of interesting. All the YouTube channels and everything you see in the YouTubers and fishing, all that was the groundwork for all that was back in the mid 70s, into the early 80s of television and content. Now you have so much distribution and availability to be able to showcase your talents. It's quite incredible, what we have now, where you just had Saturday. Back then it was Saturday TNN, and you had the fishing block. So all the fishing shows, Hank Parker, Bill Dance, and Fisherman, all those shows, just all on a Saturday. And then if you wanted more information, you ordered the VHS tape. So you sent a check or money order, and then you got an hour-long VHS tape with even more information. And then if you wanted to read up more, you read, here's the current, one of the current issues. You picked up the magazine, you pick up in Fisherman, Field and Stream, any of the magazines, and you look for, what to buy, what to throw. And now we can just get on the internet and just type it in and pull it up. It's it's changed so much, and it is kind of evolving, and we're kind of in an interesting transition phase, I think, right now, where it's going, because there's so much information out there, and which I think is actually good for more, some of these niche pieces where you find, I just want information on smallmouth, I just want information on fly fishing, specifically fly fishing for bonefish, fly fishing for carp, fly fishing for brown trout. I mean, you can get so specific now. It's with a few taps of the keyboard. It's incredible.
Absolutely. When it comes to the lay of the land, because I'm relatively new to this whole space, and I know you've kind of been in it your whole life. How is it kind of evolving? I feel like it's a tight knit community, but like you're saying, the YouTuber, anybody who has a camera can essentially just get into it, right? So I'm
Hmm.
curious on, what are you guys seeing the future of, like, this whole fishing media space, or even companies in general? Like, what's going on? Can you give kind of a lay of the land of What's up?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I wish I knew the exact perfect answer for that. And in my, in my viewpoint, it's I think people are, I think that as we, the youth that grew up on YouTube as opposed to like regular television, as they get more savvy with fishing, they're going to care less about goofy fishing videos and care more about real content and how to catch fish. And I believe if you have a good story to tell and area specific, around the country, I think, there's some really good niche, both in fish species or actually regional species. There's a channel that I check out that's just around the Las Vegas area. Again, interesting, that's sometimes if I go and I travel to different areas, you find, I kind of look up information, you find some of those channels and YouTube channel, Instagram, the content that's specific for that area. Like when I want to find out what's happening in San Diego, I go to sdfish.com and I look at the fishing reports. And in that website, it's nice. SD Fish it's San Diego. So I get like that specific information about haunches, El Cap, San V, shore fishing, and they also have surf fishing on there as well. So you can get a lot of that specific localized content. And I think, and I think in the as we're kind of transitioning in this media phase for fishing, I believe that specializing in one area is going to be really good, either with a fish or a couple fish or a technique or a regional area, and be good at kind of other things, but have one main thing that's kind of your thing, whatever that is. If it's like I said, if it's Tinkara, like we were talking before we went on air, Tinkara fishing. That's a very specific thing. And it's also, I think, I think there's a lot of growth for something like that. The people don't even know what that is. Or they might have seen, oh, it's kind of like fly fish, and it's on the stick, but you don't have a reel. And I think something like that Tinkara can really be grown, especially with new anglers. We can show them, oh, this is, you pull it out like that and you put the fly in there and you kind of work it in the stream. You can work it in the streams like that. And avoiding things like largemouth bass fishing in ponds, because unless you're doing something super special or catching really big fish, that market, especially largemouth bass fishing, is just saturated. I mean, granted the market is very big, and where the big markets are, I mean, there's still opportunity there, but it's really saturated on all the channels, and it's kind of the same. You look at a lot of the stuff, and it's the same. A lot of it is just the same thing, and it's in many of the channels. I look at some of the videos, they're boring. I'm not learning anything, or they're trying. The other thing is, a lot of the new media people, they're not really into fishing, and they're doing it for the likes or they're doing it for the views. And you can usually tell if I watch how they handle their rods, how they cast it, depending on their mechanics. I can okay, this person isn't. Maybe they're new to fishing, and if they're vocal about that, that's fine. They're still learning. But some of them that try to put on this fake front, I can tell by their mechanics that they really don't know a whole lot about what they're doing, especially when they have a big fish on. The way they handle a big fish on light line can tell me a lot about their knowledge as an angler, the way they position the rod to how like a largemouth bass is going to jump and how the fish runs. And it's too bad that a lot of people are on, social media for the likes. They're on there for the views, and if that was taken away, they probably wouldn't fish at all or rarely. And again, going back to where is the opportunity, I think it's in some of the niches. I think it's finding something in the fishing area that you're very passionate about or you genuinely like, and sharing that information. And for a video, a lot of the videos, if the content is really good, people will watch it. I like some of the videos with great editing, and some like Sam Sobey, like some of his stuff, and fishing more outdoor. I like some of the editing that they do, and also it helps that they're great fishermen too. And some of the quick cuts, the editing, the mood pieces, like Jay Siemens when he does his videos. I mean, it's like watching a motion picture. I mean, the sequences are incredible, and the fishing information is excellent as well. And on the other hand, if you're not a great editor, if you're just getting into this, if the content is really, if you're catching big fish, You can see it. You're just holding up a cell phone recording. You see those videos that go viral. You get an 8, 9 pounder on a shaky cell phone camera. It can still get a ton of views. And if the content is really good too, if the information is excellent, people will watch it. That's it. If it's just general stuff, if it's kind of a Me Too channel and you're copying exactly what other channels are doing, I don't think that's a recipe for success. I think it's good to learn from some of the other ones. Okay, I can take this from this channel or this part. I see what they're doing. That's a good idea. I like the way they frame this, or they talked about that. Now I'm going to take that and kind of move it over into saltwater inshore or something. I'm going to kind of see what they're doing in the freshwater space, or you see something in the saltwater space, be like, oh, the way they filmed that, the way they shot that, and the way they did that video series would be great to talk about for northern pike or walleye. So I think learning from good media creators and good content, and kind of making, and then not just copying their homework, but doing something maybe similar, but then making your own and owning it is going to be very important. And being available on different websites. Like you have a website, you got an easy to navigate website, which is key, and the information is there. Some of these websites, it's like, what am I looking at? And you make, like, your website is, I'm looking at, right, that's on my computer screen right here. It's very clear. You can see everything. You know how to navigate it, and it also takes you to your other page, like your YouTube page, seamlessly, Instagram and Facebook, and kind of also being, have a little bit, you have your content on Instagram, you have your content on YouTube, you have your website, and as well as your podcast, and having these different platforms that people can find you. Because sometimes somebody's only on Facebook, and all of a sudden they might see your page comes up a bunch of times, or somebody shares something from your page over months, and okay, and then finally something clicks. They're like, oh, I didn't even know. And they click on that, goes to your YouTube page, they look at the bio, and then, oh, he's got podcasts, and then, oh, okay, cool. And that's how they find you. So having these different little fingers out there where people can find you, I think is very important. And it's also it's exhausting. It's a lot of work, like getting the content out there, but it's also such a great time because you can do it with, I mean, my gosh, with a laptop and a GoPro, or even a laptop and the cell phone, and pretty much free download, free trial period, apps. You can get going and create kind of a mini empire, and create something that you love doing. And even if it's a side job, if you have your main job and this is, fishing is kind of a side passion hobby that you want to build and at least share your story with, that could build into something even bigger and bigger. I think it's fantastic.
I think there was a lot there to unpack. Going back, I'm glad you mentioned about the mechanics of fishing, because I tell pretty much everybody that I'm not great at fishing and that I'm learning, and I think that it's okay to be upfront about that, right? It's like everybody doesn't have to be an expert per se, but the longer you do something and you find the right mentors and you actually do your homework and you put time in the water and you catch fish, you're going to get more comfortable, and then 10 years down the road or whatever, you become an expert. It's like, but I'm glad that you said it. Just have the authenticity. Like, nobody's judging you out the gate. They'll judge you if you say I'm the best fisherman in the world, and then you don't know how to fish, because like you just said, you can see the nuances, right? So I think that's huge. And then I love how you were talking about, or at least we're able to kind of see how I'm kind of building Cast and Spear. Like I just have some experience in when it comes to, and I think you've seen it in your dad's company and probably your own stuff. There's layers and layers. You have to go to where people are, and each piece of content that you make should be tailored to those people where they are. People on Instagram are completely different than the people who visit your website, on Google, or they're different than the people on TikTok, which is the new one. And it's like, yes, it's a lot of work. And I'm glad that you said that, because it's like a lot of people just think, it's just shoot the video. It's like, yeah, that's step one. You have to have kind of a strategy. You have to have all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, the content speaks the volumes, right? So it's like, it's better to have one or two channels if you can put a lot of good effort into it. Sure, you're not going to make a lifestyle living off of it right out the gate. But if you stick with something over time, you keep getting better, then sure,
Mhm.
this could be turned
Mhm.
into your own little media empire,
Yeah.
and it doesn't cost that much if you live frugally. It's like maybe you
Hmm.
want 4 or 5K a month, but you get to
Hmm.
fish. Like that's a great life. You don't need to
Yeah.
have $1 million.
Yeah.
So it's like you could
Hmm.
live, and then maybe, if you want, you make more.
Hmm.
That's a lot to unpack, but I think
Hmm.
that's all great advice.
Yeah. And your point, I didn't mention, I guess maybe I didn't expand, and you hit the nail on the head with that. It's a different platform and the different message to the platform. And I've done that where I put the same video on Instagram, I put the same video on Facebook, and you will get completely different results. You put the same video on Instagram, and you'll get maybe, I won't use views because that's 10% engagement, like a really high engagement. And then you put it on Facebook and you get like 2%. Or you put it on Facebook and you get 10%, 20, and it gets 100 shares, 200, 300, 400 shares. You go on Instagram and it gets like a few comments, and uh, a 2 to 3% engagement. And it's fascinating to see. It's 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 a different audience, and then the way they view it and the way they get it. If they're looking at, obviously Facebook, a lot of people are looking in their laptop, and again, mainly on mobile, but especially Instagram on mobile. Square is better, widescreen, or Square can work on Facebook. And then I got on back in November I got a TikTok about almost a year and a half ago, something like that, a long time ago,
That's
and there was
early, man.
nothing
That's
on fishing.
early.
I got on there a long time ago, and I was watching it, and when I got on there, zero. I went and searched for fishing. Nobody had any fishing content, nothing. And I did some videos I did when I was in China, and I did this scaffolding Thai sky. I just took it with my phone. I just and then did a little funny thing to it. It's like my third video. My first video, I think, was on the Santa Monica Pier. I think it was in the first, yeah, it was almost a year and a half ago. And nobody, I didn't see anything really happen. There was no For You page, none of that stuff. And I just put fishing Santa Monica hashtags, and I kind of let it occasionally would post things. Then I got busy filming all last year. And then this fall, all of a sudden, all these people started getting on TikTok and all this fishing. And I'm like, wow, I wish I would have, I got on there early, and I didn't continue with it. I'd probably be way ahead on that. But the content on there is interesting. It's different. Vertical video. So when I edit videos, I go in and edit. It's 1080 by 1920. If I'm editing the other ones, it's 1920. By just flipping it like that. And also, you look at the different fishing. It's a different audience, and the way they, memes can work really good on Instagram and sometimes on Facebook. And obviously, you go on TikTok, and memes aren't an issue there. That's really not even a thing there. And the vertical videos with the music that you can overlay on there, it's a different audience. And I think we're, with TikTok, trying to figure out how that platform can be utilized for fishing. Obviously, you can put your link for, I have my link for my Instagram and YouTube in there. You put a little bio in there, but it is, it's an interesting platform. And then apart from that, even Twitch. So I did my Twitch channel a long time ago, and I tried doing this past summer. I tried doing some live fishing, and that's one area that I'm very excited, and I've been wanting to do that even more and more the past few years. And I did that originally on Periscope. When Periscope came out, I did some live fishing videos, and but I had to like clamp the phone to face the rear facing camera live, and make sure I was on a lake that had a cell phone set, which is usually pretty tough to get in the middle of the lake and get on fish that are biting, go live. But it was pretty amazing. It was like you're doing a magic trick when you catch a fish live, and I've always been very interested in the live fishing. Um, because it's like when you do it, it's the times I've done it on my own channel, even my Instagram live, it's like you're doing a magic trick, because you can always edit together. You can record hours and all this. Oh, here's a cast to catch, which is cool, which is great. I like the full cast, and then hook set. I like to see that from start to finish. And but live, there's something special about live, and I also think it's very difficult because people don't do it. It's difficult to catch fish live because you can't mess it up, and that you can delete it afterwards. When people can do screenshots, they can really nitpick you when you're live. And I think that is a form of fishing for media that is still untapped, especially on places like Twitch where you can monetize. Some of the fishing channels that I've seen on Twitch, fixed camera, shore fishing, and a lot in Europe, around the world, Russian channels, Eastern European channels, Central European channels. And I'll watch some of them. And they have, you can follow and you can become Patreon people, and they have, they're smaller channels, but they're able to monetize on this Twitch platform very well. And I think Twitch is something that a lot of fishermen have not gone on to yet. Because it is harder, it is live, and the other thing is Twitch has got live right. They figured out how to, their whole thing is it's live, but it's also how to help creators monetize their content. And Twitch has got better than any other platform. That's, Twitch makes that you give them a stuff. I forgot what they're called, the little coins, and it's like a quarter. You like their content, you catch a fish and you give them coins. It's actually money in your bank. Or you pay for special icons to use during streams. So Twitch, I think, is still something, and you don't hear that in the fishing. Nobody really talks about Twitch because it's live, and you got to know what you're doing to catch fish live. The people tune in, and if you're not catching a fish in a couple minutes, unless you're just talking, people just tune off. But if you catch a fish and fight it for a while, hold it up to the camera, release it, I mean, that is difficult to do because the fish has to cooperate. The camera angle has to be just right. You have to have a good signal, wherever you're fishing. And it sets up more for shore fishing, I think, with a fixed camera, do a wide angle lens. But I think Twitch has a lot of space to move in the fishing area because it is worldwide. Twitch is worldwide. So you can get people from all over the world. And if you're catching fish, if you don't understand what they're saying, and I've watched fish, I don't know what the guy's saying. I know he's casting out, he's catching big fish, and it's cool. And that's the nice thing with a lot of the, YouTube and Twitch, and it's just cool seeing content of just fish being caught. So in the future here, coming in 2020, I think you'll see a big growth in Twitch, or I think not Twitch, but TikTok. And I still think Twitch will still be good for the next couple of years. And I think it's going to grow because they know how to help their content creators monetize money. And they got the live game down years ago. They figured out live and broadcasting live right.
Yeah, I think you're right about TikTok. And TikTok, if you go live, I think they do the same thing that Twitch does, which has, you can buy the quote-unquote fake little stickers or whatnot and send it over that way. I think you're right, though, about Twitch. There's just so many variables that have to kind of be perfect. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can see how that's going to be a barrier to entry to any, not a poser, but, anybody who doesn't really necessarily know how to fish, So I think that's that's really good if a lot of the people who are, bona fide experts can get out there. And I know a lot of people would love to see that. Because isn't that where fishing really kind of keeps us hooked, right? It's when is the fish going to bite? When you watch an edited video, the fish is coming. Like, no matter what,
it's queued up. Yeah,
it's like you could just fast forward and then it's like there. But I think you're absolutely right that you bring a little bit of the excitement that most videos can't portray, and I think that's going to be huge. So what do you add on TikTok? I mean, a year and a half ago, man, you should be at 1 million at this point.
I started posting, I started putting up some content on there, and then I dropped off for months when it started to really grow. So I dropped off for months and months and months, because I was just filming from last spring. I just stopped doing it, and then I kind of let it I didn't have anything for 8 months or not, whatever it was. And I just started reposting finally again. So I missed a lot of that uptick.
I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're back, though.
Which is important also to keep a consistency, and I'm very guilty of not doing that. Even my YouTube channel just has like 12 videos on there. But I also, but I'm creating content for the Ontario Experience, AnglingBuzz, and the other, and the other brands that I do. So, consistency with the content. I'm very guilty of not being consistent with my content. But when I am, even if it's for a couple of weeks, you see the you see the spike in the numbers and the reach, and I think that's very important.
You just
Mhm.
need an accountability partner, man. I'm right here. I'll text you. I'll be like, "Come on, man. Where's your
Uh,
video?"
yeah, post. All right, all right. Even if it's a bad picture, just put something up.
I want to transition a little bit because you said you were the TV host, right, of a fishing show. What is that like compared to, you know, doing stuff on the social media scene? I mean, TV to me sounds like a whole different ball game. So, how did
Mhm.
you get started in
Yeah.
that? Do you think TV is still, it's a goal for some people who might want to do it? Is it still worth it? I'd love to hear this kind of story.
Mhm. Yeah. Good question. I think TV is still very strong, and because the audience that watches TV has a lot of spending power. So when you're talking to sponsors and you're talking to people that are buy lure, they're not going to blink at a $10 lure. They're not going to, these are the people that buy 10, 20,000, 40, 50, $60,000 boats, expensive equipment, and they're not young, um, a young demographic just on YouTube. So they have a lot of spending power. And for television, we started AnglingBuzz started back in 2016, and I came on to host that. And that's kind of an in-studio Sports Center style TV show. It airs on Fox Sports back in the Midwest, and then we put it up on YouTube after it airs. And it's a very fast-paced show. It's a lot of fun to watch, and they just put up the longer format. They strictly went. It's interesting. They strictly went on YouTube this past for Angling Buzz Ice, and the videos have done really well. Very, very good reach on there, and longer format. It's a commercial breaks and all that stuff. So we're kind of looking at. I was just talking with James, my cousin James, about what we're going to do with Angling for this year. Start filming it in April, and it airs May, June, July, and we'll probably do a couple. We're talking, well, do we do a couple different versions? Probably what we'll do. We'll have the TV version. It will have a longer version, the exact same studio setup, and that's going to go on YouTube. So it's interesting. We said, the message to the guy, well, the TV version has to be, we get 22 minutes of content or whatever, and then it has to go to the network. And then online, we're going to have a 30-minute kind of unedited version of the show, without the TV commercials. And when you're working on TV, it is interesting because you're dealing with these specific time constraints that have to happen. I mean, it has to be exactly this long. They have to have this many commercials on there. This sponsor, Rapala, has to have a 30-second commercial at the beginning. They get a 30-second commercial at the at the second commercial break, and then they get a bumper on the way out. So there's, unlike YouTube, there's specific things that have to happen in the advertising space with that. And filming for the other show, the Ontario Experience, which has been quite an experience. That's where I travel myself. I co-host that with Ty Sogin, and he does the hunting side of it and a little bit of fishing. I do just fishing, and we go to 13 different lodges. It's usually split up. I'll go to 6 or 8. He goes to 6 or 7. It's 13 episodes, so we kind of it's split up throughout the season. We go up there and we film featuring the lodge, featuring Ontario. I also am kind of backup cameraman, so I bring up my GoPros and I'll film some of the, if you look in the show, if you see like chesty stuff, a lot of that's just mine. Like we're filming and I'll throw in the chesty, and I do some of the, I try to help out with some of the B-roll content. And it's interesting because you're on a show like that, you're also held accountable because you have to show the numbers not only for the viewership, but it's sponsored by the lodges and Ontario Canada Tourism. So we have to show that it's full accountability. We got to know that these lodges are getting people there. We follow up with them. How many people are booking? How many inquiries are you getting? So there's a lot of accountability there. It's not just going up and just filming to film. We got to show that the proof for what we did is making them, more customers, more people coming in, making them a profit based on what they're investing in. So it's an interesting. It's not just we just talk about this rod reel line and whatever happens happens. It's like, no, we got to follow up. How many sales? And I follow up with the lodges. How many calls did you get? The show aired. how many bookings did you get, how many inquiries, and follow up the next year, how many repeat customers did you get, and then report that back to Ontario Tourism. And if the numbers aren't there, well, they're not going to say, no, we're not going to fund the show. So it's kind of a different. It's not necessarily a technique show. It's a travel show based around fishing. So as Pete Poloni, he's one of the producers, and he travels up there to film it with me. He says it's a show. He said it right. It's a show. It's not a fishing show. It's a show about fishing. So it's a travel show about fishing and hunting for what Ty does. He does the hunting, and that's why I don't get too specific on the techniques. You show the beauty of traveling there, and you travel a lot. So if you went to some, like when you're in Bangkok, shore fish for that, it would be about, it's about the red-tailed catfish. It's not necessarily just, here's the specific rod reel line, here's the fishing park, here's the food, and you get some good khao soi, some pad thai, and, it's this whole, this whole, like I said, the experience of travel up there. And Ontario is a special place. It is, I believe there's like 250,000 lakes in the province of Ontario, and it holds a large portion of the entire world's fresh, something like, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to lowball it, 20% of the world's fresh water is located in Ontario, Canada, which is an amazing amount when you think of just when I heard that we do this Did You Know segment, it's like Ontario, Canada, it's like, no, it doesn't. And then like we look it up online, oh gosh, well, 250,000 lakes, and I mean, that's an amazing amount of water. And if you go on Google Earth, you just look at the lakes there, it's an incredible part of the world with fish that will probably never see a hook. They never see a bait ever. And there's probably lakes that have never been, many lakes that just never been fished ever, and maybe never will. And that's kind of crazy to think of when you think about just the world and how many parts of the world that are kind of untouched, and with a lot of opportunity to fish. And I think Ontario is just fascinating up there. I mean, it is, especially with the conversion rate. It's very affordable to go up there. There's a lot you can drive up, you can fly in, and it's truly an amazing experience to go up there and either trophy fish, or if you just want to catch walleye, there's lakes you catch 100, 200 walleye, where it's just people go up there with their little counters, and their goal is to break, how many did you get today? And guys will come in by lunch and be like, we got 120. And it's you drop down, and it's just this numbers game. And there's places where you go where I want to catch a 30-inch, 29-inch walleye. A lot of places like that, you're going to get a couple bites a day, and you're going to get the possibility for the fish of a lifetime, or at least the biggest fish of the entire year. And that goes for everything: smallmouth bass, muskie, pike, but especially walleye. Walleye reigns supreme up there, and pike, it would be second. We don't think of northern pike in the United States. It's kind of down the list a little bit, but in Canada, pike is a very, very big game fish.
I think you nailed it on the head when it says, there's so much opportunity to showcase the cultures, not just the cultures of like the country that you're visiting, but like the different fishing cultures. And that's just so much more than just the how-to videos. And the how-to videos are great. I mean, I think they're amazing and they're needed. But I think, like you said it with my little thing to Thailand, I wasn't really there necessarily to like, oh, I caught some big fish. I was there just because it's like, that's a whole nother world right out there. And hopefully somebody else like who's back at home could be like, I should go see that. And the fish is like kind of the arbiter, the thing that kind of binds us all together. We all like to catch fish and do all that stuff. But it's like, I just think that's super cool that you're showcasing their culture up north in Canada. What was it like to get them to come on board? Was that hard, or did you have any special recommendations?
The original, you see these TV shows, you wonder where is the inception point of the idea for the show. We were at Hawk Lake Lodge filming an Angling Edge show. Myself, Ted Putnam, who owns Hawk Lake Lodge, and he also works with Ontario Tourism. He's on the board there. And then my cousin Dan, who runs Lindner Media. Him and his brother James run Lindner Media. And we were just sitting up there, and we had a few drinks. and which sometimes happens up in Canada at lodges, and we're talking about ideas, for different show ideas. And we kind of came up with this tourism destination show for Ontario lodges. And Ted said, well, I can market this thing and we can shoot it here. We can shoot one of the episodes here. Dan said, well, I know production. I know how to edit the show. I know how to present the package to it. And I said, well, I'll host it and I'll help shoot some of it. And it was kind of like, I'll just say, yeah, all right, whatever. It was just kind of half serious, half joking, and then more serious as we actually thought about it. We're like, how much is it going to cost per episode? Bare bones, we do this. Because Ted said, when a show airs for Hawk Lake Lodge, he can calculate. It's going to make money. It's like if the show airs, I get bookings, and he tracks it. Show airs, I get calls, I get bookings, and he was already in on it. So then we came back with it, and we kind of created this. I went back and I spent a week actually. I got back in front of the computer after we filmed or finished AnglingBuzz. It's been 5 days. I just sat in front of the computer. I got an Adobe Illustrator and did some graphics for the show. I did 13 episodes in 13 different lodges. I talked about the lodge. I did the bios on myself and Ty, what the show would be about. I did a little map with pin locations and packaged all that together. And we kind of proofread it, make sure everything was good. Dan got that, and then Dan worked out the time, because then you have to get on the TV network, which networks. He has a connection to the networks, so you got to figure out which networks is going to be on Fox Sports, Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, Pursuit. We looked at all the different networks. Pursuit was the right channel for it. And then how do we do in Canada with different, different getting in Canada, if it's on sports, World Fishing Network, Sportsman Channel Canada. So he figured all that stuff out. And then Ted brought us to tourism and helped help sell it to tourism. Then we had to go pitch and try to get the lodges on board and get the crew as well, and then create the social media stuff for it and the website and get all that stuff going. And the first year, I went up and filmed the shows with John, and it was kind of, it's different than a fishing. You catch a couple fish, and usually fishing show, you want to catch more fish, but you get the fish, you talk about the lodge, and then you go back, film the lodge, film the highlights of the lodge. And it kind of, the first year was an experimental year, and I think, we've kind of hit a nice stride, a nice formula with it. And that's kind of how the inception for the show came up. It was just one night at the lodge, three of us talking. And sometimes you have that with friends. You sit around, you talk about an idea, or especially after a few drinks or something, we should do this, this, and this. And many times, a lot of those ideas are, as crazy as they sound, very possible, especially if you're with people that know their expertise, or what, you're with somebody that's, we should do this website, and you've got a buddy that knows how to design website. I could design that thing easy. And then the more you think about it, if you know this part of it, and you get together people that know their expertise. He knows television production, he knows website design. If you find a few friends, and it's amazing what you can build when you get some people together and you get a goal together and you all work hard on it to make it happen. A lot of times it doesn't happen, but it can happen.
Yeah, I'm all about just getting people started. It's worth trying. It's better than the regrets of not even trying.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
That's amazing. Did it take would you say it took about a year or so from the first drinks to when you guys were shooting your pilots, or was it?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, just to put in perspective, that's.
Yeah. And it was also well before, in all the years before that of the, Ted was running the successful lodge and working. So it was all his expertise up to that point, from what he knew about running a lodge, what it takes to run a good lodge and promote tourism also in Ontario. Dan, from his whole life of television production, working with networks, and then myself just being involved in the background and all this, and understanding television production as well. Growing up, I understand filming, of TV specifically, so I know what that takes. And also my limited expertise in social media said, I can start the social pages. I'll get those up and running. I'll create the banners and all that. So I knew a little bit about that stuff, where we could have hired out some of that stuff, but we knew, I picked up some of the extra little work on myself just to make it, just like I said, just good enough. You try to make it perfect, before you go to market with it, and whatever it is. A lot of times, just get it just good enough and get it out there for the most part. Especially if somebody's thinking about starting a YouTube channel, and I'm guilty of this for my own personal channel. I want it to be it's got to be so good. The editing's got to just get it out there. Just get it out there and get some content out there and worry about it afterward. I got it. Like my videos, I got a number of these, and that's fine. That's fine. That's life. Not everybody's going to love what you do. So you do it for the people that give you this when you're on YouTube. You do it for the people that do that and the people that find you. These people, well, they probably just did a whole bunch of videos and they're probably just unhappy with their life in general. So don't worry about them. And I heard a good comment of reading a book from Seth Godin, and it was, you edit. Number one, you edit, and I think about this on different posts and different videos. You edit for yourself, number one. Create the content, the photo, the story for yourself. Number two, edit for your fans, your followers. What do they want? And you mix the message. And then number three, you edit for your haters. That being, don't give them anything that they can use against you. And I've done that on some of my videos where I actually had one video where it was a trout video in Wyoming, and I go to net to cast a catch and a nice little brown trout, and I lean over. I had the GoPro up, and I lean over to catch the fish, and my pants fell down. My crack was hanging out, and what I did, and it would have just steered away from the message of what I was trying to talk about. This little hidden trout stream, the way this current was coming in, and kind of this little adventure thing. And I didn't want it to steer that way, and I didn't want to become a meme or something, or something like that. So what I did in the video was I just zoomed in on the trout. You can see the edit, like I go to net the fish, and I just did a simple, in editing thing, you zoom in, highlights the fish, and then it comes back out. But that little lean over like that. So that was editing for any haters, anybody that wanted any negativity on that. And I've also done that in some of the fishing thing, which is nice. You can't do this in live, but you can do it with, editing, the video. Don't give your haters anything to give them less. If they hate you just because, or they dislike your content just because they're an unhappy person, you can't change that, but you don't want to do something on there specifically to give them any ammunition they can use against you for whatever reason. Because then it gets off in the comment section. You just and then it goes into politics. All of a sudden you're going into politics. Like what? We're talking about fishing, and it goes way off track. It's like, how did we get here? Like, what? Relax. We're just fishing. We're just catching fish.
Definitely. And I think in the algorithm for YouTube, I could be wrong on this, like this still counts the same as this. So it's engagement, right? And that's what they care about, even though of course it hurts when you see some of these but when there's no context, to me that helps a lot until it's like you see some of the comments. And then when you see some of the comments and they're super negative, I have to think back to myself. I'm like, man, I don't think I've ever left a negative content in the 20 plus years I've been online. Yeah. So I'm just like, I just have a little bit of like, oh, everybody has a bad day. Or if it is something that really should be fixed, thank you for telling me, even if it doesn't come off in the right way. It's like I can learn from that. There's a lot there. One thing that's helped me with the YouTube, because I'm kind of like you, where I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I should put this out there. What are people going to say? And you get into your self-sabotage is what like really kills any kind of creativity. I remember watching, I don't remember who said it, but he's like, I give you permission to have 100 crappy videos. Just get through the first 100. Like, don't even worry about it. And I was like, that was, for whatever reason, it was just some words, right? That little quote unquote permission was like, okay, I have somebody who says if my 100 videos suck, that's fine. But by the time I get to the 100th one, as long as I'm trying to improve by 1% or more each video, it's going to be great.
Compound interest improvement.
Yeah. And I think that's going back to also what you were saying about, all the back history. It's crazy how much stuff compounds. So it's like, that's why it's just so important to get started. Because if you don't even get started, that compounding never has a chance to materialize. It's like nobody's ever just going to start a YouTube channel or get into fishing in general and just magically be amazing at it. It's like it takes work. It takes all these different layers and layers and layers of life experiences and trial and error and failures to then get to a spot where you're like, oh, wow, 10 years later, never would have thought I'd be here.
Yeah. And like the one video, getting back to learning from, mistakes. I'm mistaken when I did this video fishing Austria. I have to change this. I got to change the thumbnail on it. I had like fishing the Danube, and that was the thumbnail, and I mentioned it, and I thought it was the Dan, even it was a tributary just off the Danube, and it's still on there. And I've had a couple comments, and the guy mentioned it, and I said, yeah, and I changed the description to that, and I still have to change the thumbnail. But when I went out there, and I was fishing in Austria, and I thought I was fishing in Vienna, and I do the whole. If you see the video, I go through and I go to the fishing office, and the guy, didn't speak much English. He said he gets 1 to 2 foreigners, Americans, a year come into the office, and I haven't been one of them. And I just want to. I thought I could fish Vienna. I flew all the way out here, and I couldn't find any information online. Everything is in German. And he's like, "No, you got to take a test." I'm like, "When is the test?" And it's like, "Next month. It's about a week long, and if you don't speak German, it'll be very difficult." And I'm like, "Okay, well, none of those things apply. I don't speak German. I'm not going to be here next month, and I don't have a week to take a test for fishing proficiency, which many of those countries do." And I was like working. I just told him, like, I had the whole day planned. I'm like, I came to Vienna to, I just want to catch fish. And I walked around the city, and I had carp spots. I had some carp spotted. I knew I wanted to fish. I just had to get my license and make sure I was okay. And he said, "Oh, you can go to this area." And I thought it was just off the Danube. So I went out there, and I'd taken a train out there, and I got to fish for half the day. It was a lot of fun. I caught some fish, but I thought it was the Dan. I was wrong. And of course, halfway across the globe, and and I gave something, I put something out there that was, was wrong, and I got corrected on it. But fortunately, the people that corrected me was in a nice way. It was in a very good way. They could really butcher me. I thought, you're the traveling, you travel for fishing. You should know better exactly where you're going. And, a lot of times you got a lot of things going on in life, and you're juggling a lot of things. But I try to do better after that to know specifically where I am in the correct river, tributary, lake name. And I try to, give really good information on the laws and the fishing license and everything for it. And that was a big misstep. The video's still up. I still have it up. I'll change the thumbnail. But I learned, I did learn from that. And I left it. I left it out there. It's still there. I had a lot of fun doing the video, but I learned from that. And that was a very public mistake on my part. But a minor one. It's just a labeling issue. I just labeled it wrong. It wasn't the Danube. It was the Morova River that just runs into the Danube. So.
Well, at least you didn't get held up by the cops. My cousin still makes fun of me because I went with him to Barcelona last year, and I was using the FishBrain app, and a lot of times people tag, just this is like the zone, and I was like, oh, I don't need to hire a guide. I'm just in Barcelona, and I saw fish the day before in this one like public area, and this was like at the very beginning of me trying to like start anything on YouTube, and I'm like fishing there. All these people are looking at me. I don't see any signs. I had the fishing license, and then beep, beep, and I'm getting like next thing I know, I'm getting like pretty much extorted for my money. Like, I'm like, I don't have any cash. They're like, you have to go all the way over there to the ATM, and this is how much your ticket is. And they open up this like little book, and I don't speak that. My Spanish isn't great, so I'm just trying to get by, but luckily they let me go. But I have it all on camera. Like, it was funny. They saw the GoPro after they were trying to get me to get the cash, and they saw that I was recording. And then as soon as they saw it, they're like, "You're free to go." I was like, "What?"
Wow. All right. Well, that's a good thing. You always keep the chesty running.
Always keep it on, man. It's kind of funny. But going into some of your travels, where do you recommend people, if they're interested in ditching the U.S. for a little bit to travel the world for fishing? Where should they go?
Besides Ontario, Canada, if you want to go to a lodge or you want to go up, Ontario has about, I think, over 3,000 lodges and resorts in Ontario. So a ton of options if you're in the upper Midwest and kind of want to get away. It's a lot, other parts of the world, it's beautiful up there. And that's one area, I would highly recommend. And if you message me, I can recommend some areas for trophy muskie, trophy walleye. You go to other parts of the world, you're not going to get giant walleye, giant muskie like you can up there. Especially in the quiet country up there, your chance to see a wolf, a moose, a bear, hopefully at a safe distance, not up close. And other parts of the world, Thailand, and you've been there, you fished there, and Thailand. We just my girlfriend and I went there. We spent a few weeks out there, and that's really, the fishing, the fishing parks and the way they're designed. There's really great access just to go there, especially if you're going with friends, or you're going with your spouse, and you just want to catch a fish. You don't have a lot of time. You're not bringing a lot of gear, or maybe you don't bring any gear, and you're just on vacation. And you want to go to the beautiful beaches there. There's so much to do and see there, and you just want to go fishing. Well, they have these fishing parks, as you know, that they're perfect. And you have it like in your videos. You show like that red-tailed catfish that you caught, the Mekong catfish. You just show up, you pay the money, and you have a chance at these exotic species without going too far into the jungle. And it's a nice way, I think, to protect the resources out there, because there's so much overfishing in Asia, as I'm sure you're aware of, in Thailand, Vietnam, China, that the fish out there, if a fish is caught, it's kept, and for good reason. It's just the way they're raised. I mean, it's hard to they don't know, they don't really know catch and release. It's not really practiced there. Maybe with the younger generation, with the resources, they're probably getting more educated. But I'm sure the generation that's 30 years old and older, if you caught a fish, you kept it because it's food. And that's what your grandparents did. That's what your parents did. And I mean, especially any big fish, to be able to live long enough to grow big. Those fishing parks are a lot of fun. They're pretty awesome. And to catch, it is in a pond, but it's something special about it. I mean, you can go into the wild, but all right, you're going to spend this much money. You're going to have to go up in the river. You have to hire a guide, go deep into the jungle, and I'm sure that's an incredible experience. I'd love to do that, and I want to do that someday. But if you're just out there vacation, it's perfect. You go to Phuket, you go to Chiang Mai, you're in those Bangkok. There's a lot of area. Just put in fishing park, boom, and the from a U.S. dollar to the Thai baht out there, the exchange rate is awesome. You can stay in great places for $30-$40 a night, really nice places for $30 or $40 a night. $25 to $30, you can stay in a pretty decent three-star hotel, and meals $5-$6, for a meal over there. So it's really cheap. Thailand is fantastic. I did fish in China. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're looking for a really big challenge.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, when I went into Shanghai not this past fall, the fall before, and I couldn't find any, they block Instagram, they block YouTube, they block Google out there, and Facebook. So finding information on Shanghai, fishing, specifically around Shanghai, I found one blog, I think, that a guy went there, and I found I couldn't find the location of the park since they blocked Google. If you go on Google Maps and you go to China, it's off. Everything is off. You'd be walking down the street and you're just off, and the street doesn't look anything like you're on. And the location, the businesses, everything is just different. You can't trust the Google navigation there. And once you're there, trying to find fishing information is very, very difficult. And what I did is, when I went to Shanghai, I wanted the challenge. So I went there and try to see what I can catch there. And what I did is, I went on Google Earth, I went on Google Maps, and I just tried to find blue areas. And I'd take the train stop, I'd bring my gear, I'd take a backpack, some travel rods, bread, and a hook, and a little swim bait. Between those two, I can catch, probably anywhere in the world you're going to catch a fish. So I'd go to these blue areas and just try to sell. A lot of them, you couldn't fish there, or there was no lake there. I get out and I'd look and like, okay, there's nothing here. One of the bigger parks you couldn't fish, and then I fish, I believe Chengfen Park, never caught anything there. Did see a giant carp jump, didn't catch anything there. Then I went to another park that had really big, I think big head carp. What were they? I think the big head and grass carp there. I just fished there for a little bit, didn't catch anything. And I went to this pay-to-play place that I caught a largemouth bass there. I caught a koi. You pay $10 or 100 yuan. And it's all catch and release, which is really nice. A really nice, fun little place in Shanghai. But the other lakes are it's difficult, really difficult to get, to those places, period. And and you kind of have to get outside the city to be able to catch the fish. But I'd like to go back and venture a little bit more inland on China to and fishing license too. I don't think there. And I asked her, "Is there fishing license here?" You try it and people fishing. No, you just fish. They're okay. Especially with the government there, I was careful when I had the Chessie and the cameras because all the CCTV cameras over there. I was very careful where I was filming, when I was filming, to make sure I wasn't filming government buildings, intersections with the camera. I was kind of careful with that. Um, the other, if you're looking for excellent fishing in Europe, I would highly recommend Netherlands. Netherlands, the Viespass is about $40 American. You go over there, you pretty much just fish anywhere, any canal, anywhere, unless it's posted that you can't fish or if it's a protected waterway. And outside of the season, March, I believe, when is it? April 1st through the end of May is closed season freshwater. You can fish like 1-inch lures, I believe, barbless, little flies. But outside of that, it's spawning time for the pike, zander, and perch. So you can't fish for like 2 months. They're pretty much freshwater. Outside of that, Netherlands is set up. There's canals everywhere. I mean, all over. And you can catch giant pike, perch, zander, carp throughout all the canals. Really, really healthy. Germany, really tough. Switzerland has some nice fishing in there, but Switzerland, if you catch the fish per the rule, you have to kill it. I think the same thing in Germany. So Switzerland, I emailed the fisheries department over there in one of the cantons. The cantons are like the counties, and I emailed them and said, "What's it is? All right, single in Zurich, single barbless hook, and you can fish from sunrise to sunset in the section. You can fish in the lake, or you can just fish the section of the river. And then if you catch a fish that you were trying to target, you have to hit it with a blunt instrument. So you have to have a bat or something so it suffers one time in its life. So you catch the fish, you knock it out immediately, and you keep it to eat it. Otherwise, if you didn't intend to catch the fish, you have to release it immediately. So coincidentally, all the fish I caught, I didn't intend to catch. I was trying to catch a zander, so I released everything. And
Interesting.
I haven't fished in Spain. One of there I do want to fish. I've never fished in Spain, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
There's some good spots in Barcelona that I found out on the day I was leaving. So in the
Oh,
very beginning, I didn't ever really use a guide. I didn't really know too much about it. I always, here at home, you either do your research online or, you just kind of wander and figure stuff out. But
yeah.
I learned very quickly that if I'm going to be doing any of these kind of travels abroad, I now try and find a reasonably priced guide, or at least somebody that's in the area that I can talk to, because I pretty much
Hmm.
blew a whole bunch of opportunities to go into some like pristine in the in just outside of Barcelona for some really nice brown trout, and I wasn't there at the right
Oh,
time for
nice.
some tuna that you can go in
Oh,
the Mediterranean, I
okay.
think it is. So it's like, when do
Huh.
you use guides ever, or is it always kind of you do the research and you figure it out yourself?
For the Ontario TV show, we usually use guides because that is, we're promoting the lodge, and we only got a couple days to film, and we also want to promote the guiding, so we go out with guides. There. When I go to the other countries, sometimes I'll link up with a local, like in Netherlands, I have because of the uh, Christian Drost. I've gone out with him, and he's put me on some good fish. But he's also a friend. He does guiding. He's a friend. And for some of the, for most of it, I'm just by myself, just trying to walk the canals in the city and go out and figure out. I like that. And occasionally, when needed, if you got to rent a boat or you need a cat, some of the things they come with a captain. You have no choice. And in the Netherlands, I have used like when I went out on Valkerak a couple years ago. Um, I fished with a guy out there, so he was Roman. He had a big fast boat, so we went on his boat. He took us, I mean, right to the fish. It was pretty awesome. So there are, I think there are times to, I think there's times for both. I like to explore, on my own primarily, and some, when I went to Lake Biwa, I went out with Tack. He's a guide, because there's no other way, and he was great. And the Lake Biwa is huge, so it was really nice to go out with him. I think if you fish Lake Biwa, definitely pick a guide because you'll be stuck on shore. And as an American, from what I understand, you cannot. I tried to rent a boat there and I couldn't. you had to be part of a fishing club. So I was like, how do I join a fishing club? And like, you can't really. I'm like, okay, got it. It was like, so if you go to Fish Lake View in Japan, I would highly recommend a guide like TAC. And um, the lakes or the rivers in Japan, you don't need a fishing license for a lot of the major rivers. And you can go there and catch bass, smallmouth. There's smallmouth bass. There's carp, big carp in there. You don't need a license, which is really nice. You go up in the mountains to some of the specialty lakes, you do need a license. But if you're in Tokyo, and you're just fishing around, I believe a lot of the inshore stuff, you're pier fishing and you're fishing off, fishing the riverbanks. I'm pretty sure, I know in freshwater you didn't need a license for the major rivers. That was pretty cool.
Japan is one of my favorite places in the world. And when I was there, I regret not doing any fishing. I was there for only about 2 weeks, but I was there with some friends that didn't fish. But I need to go back. I need to go back. Now that I'm doing Tenkara here, it's like I really want to go back and just learn from some of the locals out in that area. That kind of is a nice segue into what kind of gear do you like to take when you go on these trips? Do you have like a nice little travel setup that's always in your luggage that you take with you, or do you have any recommendations?
Mm-hmm. For rods, I use multi-piece rods. I think let's see here. I think I have the set. I use these. Let me get them out. These Triumph travel rods from St. Croix. You see these? They're nice 4-piece rods. Right. Let me pull back a little bit. Right here, 4-piece rod. This one's been used a lot, and I usually just put electrical tape around here, tuck that down a little bit inside the tip there, and just electrical tape that. And I fit like up to 4 of these rods in my carry-on, diagonally in my carry-on, and also in my backpack, a couple on each side. And, the medium size and medium heavy rods, I've caught some really big, up to like 25-pound carp on here. So pretty, these small rods. This is a medium light power. This would be good for trout fishing, light bass stuff, panfish, lighter stuff. And they have a medium heavy rod, for the spinning, up to that 6 different sizes. I think they have a light, medium, medium heavy, and then they have just a medium action bait caster. That's actually one I used on Lake Beulah for throwing lipless and crankbaits and jigs. And these are nice because they break down so small like that. It's a fantastic series. They retail right around like $130. And I put them through the absolute test for bigger rods. I have the hard case like this. This is a St. Croix Tide Master. These are 3-piece rods and a lot heavier rods. This is I believe the shore fishing, a 3-piece 9-foot shore fishing rod as well. And also I should take these 2 rods. Sometimes you can fit 3 rods. I can fit 3 rods in this case, not just 2 rods. And I just put electrical tape around each side. That way this counts as one item on the
Good hack right
plane. So I try to make it so you don't have to check, so it doesn't count as check-in. So I just carry it like this. And this is just like your extra item. So, Anne can carry her purse, and I got this as my extra item. I got my backpack, and I got this. And then usually you backpack this and then a roller bag for carry-on. I've got away with that. So depends on the staff, I guess.
Oh, so you're getting away with 3 items. Nice.
Yeah, I guess this is just an extra item.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
And so it really works. That for tackle, I usually just bring one. I bring one box pretty much on all these trips. I'll bring one box. It'll be swim baits, moon eye jigs, sleek jigs, single hooks, some weights, and usually jerk baits. So when I'm, something that I can fish in freshwater, saltwater, and jerk baits work in both. And they don't get snagged up. Something not like a crankbait that'll hit the bottom, get snagged, and get hung up. Single swim baits work freshwater, saltwater, 1/4 ounce, 3/8, half pounds, and just a few of each, primarily like 1/4 ounce. And single hooks with a weight that you can put a chunk of meat on. For catfish, you can put a, bait bread and a hook will catch anything that pretty much feeds on the bottom. It's in the carp family. And that, that works everywhere. And I try to travel as light as possible, with my gear, especially going to areas that I just don't know what I'm going to catch. Like when I went to Thailand, a lot of just single hooks, from small ones, from number 6 hooks all the way up to like 2/0, 3/0 single hooks for really single heavier fish, heavier gauge, to handle the bigger fish. And then single swim baits, number 1 bait. If I didn't know anything anywhere in the world, I'd bring a 1/4 ounce mooneye jig, a 3 to 4 inch swim bait, and some single number 2 and number 1/0 hook, and some weights, and go anywhere in the world to catch fish. Obviously with whatever gear you have, you can even handline fish with those baits, except maybe the swim bait, but trying to keep it simple, without, I'm not packing a whole lot of gear. Bring about maybe 15 pounds worth of gear total, including, scissors, pliers, everything. And I'll have a plastic Ziploc bag for I'll bring my bio bait, and I'll bring, some soft plastic swim baits and that. So I'll travel kind of as light as possible with that. But it is a challenge, knowing what to pack, what they're going to bite on. But I like that. I like that challenge.
When you have all this little travel setup, you can take that on as carry-on, or can you check? You always check it in?
Both. Usually carry. I've flown American. I just did a sports show in Illinois, and I had 5/0 up to 5/0 treble hooks. It's a pretty big treble, even for saltwater. Up to 5/0 treble hook, no problem. And flying international, I've done that. Flying international, I probably wouldn't use giant hooks like that, but I think you get away with like number 2 hooks. And down, I've had that, and I've kind of tested it, and I've never had any of the hooks taken away until this last trip in Thailand, flying domestic, I was flying from Phuket up to Chiang Mai, and flying on Spring Airlines, which is a wonderful, I won't say anything bad about Spring Airlines, except if you don't have to fly Spring, I wouldn't fly Spring. The deals are there, but you get a $50 flight, and then you get
For a reason.
$5 to pick a seat, $10, $5 to use the bathroom. It's a discount airline, but they also made me throw away all my hooks. So as we're boarding, I've never had an issue ever on an airline. And I actually had to, and I forgot my split ring pliers, which I always keep on just in case on my books. My bag. I can take the hooks off really quick and keep the bait and just replace the trebles. But I accidentally left the split ring pliers in my check bag. So then I had all these hooks in there, all these big jigs, and I had some of them in my check bag, and then I had a bunch actually in my carry-on just to make the bag lighter. And sure enough, I went through, and they're like, "You can't travel." I'm like, "What?" All the hooks, tiny little hooks, everything had to go. And I went to go to recheck my bag, and the line was too big. The line was too long. We were flying out, and they were just barely moving in the line. So I went to the garbage thing, and I had a storm glide bait, X-wraps, jigs, and I had to dump a lot. It wasn't $100 worth of tackle. Just had to throw it away. And that's the only time traveling everywhere in the world that I've ever had to throw away hooks on a flight.
That's depressing. I haven't had problems with the hooks, even with check-in. I've had problems with the line. Even the line that's like wrapped around. Yeah, wrapped around. I think this was in China, and we were flying home, but we had like a pit stop from, I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, they thought I can strip out the line from my spinning reel and use it to choke somebody. So I had to have like a nice 10-minute argument on why I wouldn't do that.
Oh my God.
I was able to get through, but I was just like, really? That's, well, right. I guess. Thanks for putting the idea in my head, I guess. I wouldn't even have thought of that. Huh. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Well, I'm sorry to see that trash can just got really expensive. That's depressing.
I just rather give it to somebody than and I also didn't want to leave it out at the air. I leave out a bunch of hooks just out in the side,
Yeah.
And I walk away from it and the cameras are all there. So I was like, gosh, I hope somebody dug through the garbage, found those baits and used them.
How are you doing on time? I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you.
What's that?
How are we doing on time? I don't want to. Are you okay still? I only have like 1 or 2 more questions if that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I would love to. This is a little bit sidetrack from travel, but I'm pretty sure you have experience with dealing with like fishing brands and stuff like that for your various shows and endeavors. How does somebody get in to like building that relationship and fostering that? Because I know right now it's really popular to have like this influencer marketing and whatnot. And I kind of have a general idea of what they'd be looking for. But when do you recommend somebody who's in this space go start talking to brands, and what are they looking for?
Brands, when you go to a brand, I would highly suggest, especially going to smaller brands instead of bigger brands. Up and coming brands would be really, I think that's regional brands. I think would be a much better play than going to big national brands, at least to start off with. And especially if your content is regional brands will want that, or even national brands need regional content. So again, going back to what we talked about before, if your niche is regional and very specific, it's a lot easier, I think, for some of these companies to want to sponsor you, get your product, discount on product, or even cash. And coming to them already, I believe, is strong. Coming to them with already some content, especially content you haven't put out. So if you want to go to some lure company, some soft bait company, some tackle company, some rod company, go out and get some photos, get some videos with it, send it to them and say, I haven't put these out yet, but this is the type of content I would like to do for you. These are the type of things I would like to do for you. I haven't even put these, what do you think of this? And I think that would go as strong as, people usually just say, go like this, can I get some lures, or can I get this? And because if you get the stuff, you can create the content, that's fine. You also don't want to put out too much beforehand for free, to promote. So finding that balance. So I think, finding the marketing person, the right person, and sending them something that you've already done that isn't out there. You're like, I haven't posted this yet. This is something, if you want to use this, if not, I can post it on mine. But I think that, would be a strong play to some of the brands, and not going after the big national brands, going after regional brands, or going after brands that are just starting out, that are a year old, 2 years old. A lot of those companies get bought up. And they also you see some of these companies that really scale up. And if you get in there at the beginning, you can be there when it rides up high. And if you're there at the beginning, they can reward you pretty well for being true to the brand. And a lot of those companies that are already up high, it's very difficult to get in with them.
That's so smart, man. I actually have not heard that suggestion. That's really smart. I have to change my approach. So how can...
generally,
Sorry, what was that? It kind of cut out. What was that last part?
Oh, sorry. A little poor connection here. Hang on. Go ahead. What's the next question?
Oh, cool. No, I just wanted to let people know how they can reach you. Where can they find you?
You find me Instagram, Troy Lindner, and that's 2 N's, TroyLindner. Facebook, Troy Lindner Fishing. YouTube, Troy Lindner. And then TikTok, Troy Lindner. Those are pretty much all my social handles. And also you can follow me on Ontario Experience and then AnglingBuzz as well.
That's awesome. And then I like to ask one question at the very end, and that is, why do you fish?
I fish because when a big fish is on the line, or any fish is on the line, and when you cast out, you hook that fish, everything else in the world, all the concerns, all the worries, everything goes away. And when I'm fighting that fish, whether it's in a tournament, shore fishing, anything, I'm laser focused on just catching that fish, landing it, and everything else just kind of fades away. And the only thing you're thinking about is the fish on the line. And you can do that over and over. It's not escape from the problems, but it is nice to be able to just hook into something, and you're fighting that fish, and all you're thinking about, everything gets laser focused on landing that fish, and you don't think about anything else. And it's a great way, I think, also to connect to the earth, to connect to the outdoors, that you can't do in other ways, where you actually hold this animal in your hands and you release it back. And I think it gets you closer to nature and closer to God.
Troy, this has been fantastic, man. Much appreciate your time and coming on and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. It's been fun. We'll have to do it again.
Well, that does it for this episode of the podcast. Huge thank you to Troy for sharing your wisdom. If you guys have some guests that you'd like me to bring on, please let me know. Shoot me a DM on Instagram, or hit me up on all the different social media channels, or go to CastandSpear /contact and let me know. Until next time, keep those lines tight, everyone. See ya.